Hi there and welcome to part 9 of my grand bookshelf tour, and in this installment I'll be showing you some of my classics. Black Penguin ones like this and the Modern Library. But before we begin, a few facts and figures. I know people do appreciate this. These are not all of my Black Penguins and my Modern Library classics. There are hundreds more on the shelves you see behind me because I group my books by genre and period. So on one bookshelf I just have all of the classics that are kind of left over. Let me just show you a picture of how things looked before I began. And I will be restoring those books to a similar state of disorder when we're done. So on the question of how many classics I own, I've come up with a rough estimate of about 500 to 600, all of which, bar a few exceptions, were purchased used. Okay, with all that out of the way, we can begin with Tolstoy, and we have here Resurrection, a novel. I've not read this one yet. Next, Tolstoy, Master and Man and Other Stories. Now, I have read the title story here, absolutely magnificent. I really do enjoy Tolstoy's work. I read Anna Karenina this year, and I intend to read War and Peace before the year is out. Do not be put off by the prodigious page count of those two novels. They are so enjoyable. Next, we have John Cleland's Fanny Hill, Memoirs of a Woman of Pleasure. This was published around the same time as Henry Fielding's Tom Jones, and it's just as earthy and rude, a little while after Noel Flanders. And this was widely condemned by the religious authorities at the time, which in itself is a great recommendation. Next, American writing. It's Kate Chopin. Pretty much every undergraduate is going to have read The Awakening by Kate Chopin, an excellent story. They'll also have read Charlotte Perkins Gilman, The Yellow Wallpaper, trust me. Next we have another American novel, two in fact. It's Susanna Rowson with her Charlotte Temple and Lucy Temple. These are very melodramatic efforts, tearjerkers basically, where all the characters cry pretty much throughout the entire novel, apart from the heartless villain. Of course, who knows, may even cry upon occasion, just for the sake of appearances. But I didn't really enjoy these too much. They're basically intended to keep women on the straight and narrow by showing the consequences of a single loss of virtue. So the equivalent of a conduct book from, what is it, 18th century America. Then, oh, we do have Henry Fielding, I just mentioned him. Joseph Andrews, haven't got round to reading this yet. I also have Jonathan Wild somewhere. I'm a huge fan of Fielding. There's no excuse really for not getting around to this year. Then drama, Molière, The Misanthrope and Other Plays. Again, haven't read this yet. A wonderful picture there on the cover. Some kind of duel going on between what? A man and a lady. Interesting. Then Defoe, who I've also just mentioned, his A Journal of the Plague Year kind of came back into vogue with the critics or literary scholars with COVID in the last couple of years. We're going to Germany next. It's Goethe with his Maxims and Reflections. I've read quite a bit of this, and I have to admit, I didn't find his Maxims particularly interesting, really rather dull, and his Reflections equally. He needs to polish his mirror, would be my take on that. Then The Bard, Shakespeare. This is really beautiful cover. It's the Sonnets and A Lover's Complaint. I have read all of the sonnets, and I do have them behind me in some different editions, but this one was, or is, particularly nice. Next we have Henry James, who I've read a few of his novels. Turn of the Screw, another very popular text on literary studies courses, and I also really like the Aspern Papers. I did a review of his Daisy Miller, which I really could not see the point of, and this one is one of his early efforts, The Spoils of Poynton. Then we have Mark Twain. Wow, you couldn't get any more of a contrast between Henry James and Mark Twain for American writers, could you? This is simply magnificent. I love The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn as well. I've got quite a few Twain novels in these classics to show you. Then France, it's Victor Hugo with Notre Dame, known in English as The Hunchback of Notre Dame, I guess. I haven't got round to reading this one either. As you can see, these were bought with one eye on my future reading. And then we go to ancient Greece. It's Aeschylus with his Theorestian trilogy. And what do we have here? Agamemnon, the, oh, I shouldn't have tried to say them, should I? I really can't say the second one. And the last one is also pretty much unpronounceable, but maybe one day there'll be reason to read those. Oh, no, I have read this one. Thomas Hardy, Two on a Tower. I think I have 3 editions of this. The writing in this is just perfect. If you like Jane Austen, you're almost sure to enjoy this. It's just beautifully done. And his rustic characters, who are sometimes too much in the foreground for my taste, are really kept in the background here. And we have this romance between 2 very cultured individuals. One, a young man, an astronomer, and the second, a lady who believes she's a widow because her husband has gone missing in Africa, but who later discovers actually he's still alive, which is rather unfortunate because in the meantime she's married the young man. This is so romantic, and the ending is really beautiful as well. A little like a Henry James ending, a kind of 1-2 punch to finish you off. Okay, now we move over to some of these Penguin classics that have the little coloured bar, and each of these does denote something, I believe. The red one is for books from Britain. So we have here a Bronte effort. It's Shirley. I'm trying to read all of the Bronte's work, haven't quite got there yet, and this is one of the ones I haven't read. Why not leave a comment and tell me if it's better than Villette, and then I'll know which one to tackle first. Then another fine English writer. It is Anthony Trollope with his Phineas Finn. I've only read one Trollope novel, The Way We Live Now, which I've praised endlessly on the channel. Technically it was absolutely superb, although it did take more than 200 pages before it got going, but after that I just couldn't put it down. Haven't really started this one yet. This is enormous, isn't it? Yeah, we're talking almost the same length as Anna Karenina. Early American writing again. I have quite a lot of this now. Charles Brockden Brown's Edgar Huntley. I made a video about this. It's sometimes referred to as Memoirs of a Sleepwalker. Huntley is one of my favourite American writers. Huge influence on both Poe and Lovecraft. So if you like either of those, then I would suggest you will really enjoy Charles Brockden Brown. His Carwin the Billiquist, absolutely magnificent as well. Next, Jane Austen, Sense and Sensibility. Where are we with the Jane Austen reading? Northanger Abbey and Sense and Sensibility. Yes, I read this. I don't really remember too much about it actually. I'm kind of lying, but it wasn't as good as I thought it would be. I'm going to read Pride and Prejudice next, and I hope it will be better. Yeah, there's just something kind of just dissatisfying about this. It just wasn't as much as I was expecting. Then Dostoevsky, Poor Folk and Other Stories. I wonder if I've read any of these stories. Let me have a look. No, I haven't. I thought it might have The Crocodile inside, which is one of the Dostoevsky short stories I particularly enjoyed, but it doesn't. Poor Folk is mentioned by Bakhtin, which is why I wanted to get hold of this. Then another Mark Twain, Pudd'nhead Wilson. This is superb. This is one of the first novels to make use of fingerprint technology as part of the plot, and it follows a similar pattern to many of Mark Twain's novels where you have 2 people switched at birth. In this one, it's not so much a prince and a pauper, but a white master and a black servant's child, with rather bizarre and catastrophic results in the final analysis. Yeah, this one is really good. This is a late Twain novel. It's a very pointed satire. Then another Thomas Hardy novel, The Mayor of Casterbridge, which features the famous wife-selling scene. I've only read the opening of this, but it is really beautiful. I think it's about the Raddle Man, someone who walks around the countryside covered in dye from his trade. Another Hardy novel, it's Jude the Obscure. I believe this is his final novel, isn't it? Kind of just gave up in disgust after this. Haven't got to this one yet, but I hope to. Slowly making my way through Hardy. What have I read? A Pair of Blue Eyes, Two on a Tower, Under the Greenwood Tree. I think there may be one more, I can't remember offhand, but he is a superb writer. Oh, Jane Austen again. I believe this is exactly the same. Has the same picture as the other edition. May have a different intro, perhaps. And then finally, from this first stack, we have Samuel Butler, The Weight of All Flesh. This was an attack on Victorian values. Butler was writing after the Victorian period had kind of come to a close. So I guess it's the same kind of project as Lytton Strachey in his Eminent Victorians. I have a professor friend who is really into Samuel Butler, and it was him who recommended I get hold of this. I've read the first 50 pages or so, and it is mightily impressive. Okay, let's go on to the next series of black classics, which are these with the white band. All right, I need a drink first, so excuse me for a second. Okay, that's better. Arthur Miller, The Crucible. I really do think this is one of the worst covers I've seen, but it reminds me of working in a sandwich factory. That was one of my first jobs after I left school, and yes, we had to wear these hair nets, so it's bringing back all kinds of awful memories, but I really don't see the use or the beauty of this cover. What do we have next? It is Anna Catherine Green, and this is the Leavenworth case. This is a very early example of the detective novel in American fiction. Haven't got around to reading this yet, but the next one I have, it is Anne Bronte's The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, and in complete contrast to the Arthur Miller, what an amazing picture on the cover. I absolutely love this. Let me just read you the name. It's by Anne Mary Newton, that's right. And I believe Anne Mary Newton died at a very tender age, and she was a great loss to English art. As for the novel itself, as you can see, it has the post-its inside, or the tabs I should say. It's really good. It's written only a year or so, or published only a year or so after Agnes Grey, which I did a review of, and it's just amazing what a leap forward this is. It is supremely well written. The real problem I have with it is the content, and her sisters did criticise the publication of this because of its content, and I did find it just kind of overwhelming how long it goes on for, complaining basically about this simply awful man that she rushed into marriage with, but he was trying to blaze a trail. So I suppose Anne Bronte was happy enough to incur the wrath of critics and readers of her time and of our time too. But it is a great book. Next, Willa Cather, O Pioneers. I really do like the cover of this. I haven't got round to reading it yet. I understand that she's quite a good writer. If you've got any opinions, please let me know in the comments. Then, Romanticism. It's Goethe, The Sorrows of Young Werther, which led to all kinds of suicides all over Europe, didn't it? Thomas Chatterton style poets in their garrets, taking out their razors and slitting their throats and having done with it. I've read some of it, but yet to get through the whole thing, despite its being rather short. Then more drama. It is Sheridan, the Irish writer, who was around at the same time as Beau Brummell's father. So Beau Brummell grew up in the company of Sheridan in 10 Downing Street. At that time, I think the Prime Minister was Lord North. Correct me if I'm wrong, but these plays are extremely witty. Really, really good. Just hilarious. I've watched adaptations of them on YouTube and just been howling with laughter. Maybe I'll post a link to one of my favourites. Then Robertson Davies' Fifth Business, with this really strange cover. Influenced by Carl Gustav Jung's ideas. I've done a review of this, very successful one, I might add. Review 11. This is a novel like no other. Absolutely extraordinary. Although I have since found a novel that may bear comparison with it, and that is Italo Calvino's The Castle of Crossed Destinies. That is also in the same kind of territory. This really sets you off in the wrong direction for more than 150 pages, and the second half of it is absolutely phenomenal. What a great writer from Canada, I believe. Then some history. It is Livy, The War with Hannibal. I just picked this up, but I really haven't got round to reading my kind of selection of Roman texts as yet. I believe Livy is from Rome. I could be wrong. But it's waiting for me on the shelf. And another one by Livy. It is Rome and Italy, with the magnificent cover there. and yet more Livy. I really don't remember this Livy spree, but here we have Rome and the Mediterranean. I really do feel compelled to read these one day, having realised now that I have 3 of them. And similarly, Cassius Dio with his The Roman History, the Reign of Augustus. Again, magnificent cover. All right, we're headed back towards stuff that I have read. And this next one, Horace Carl Wieman, Against Nature, Arrebor, a magnificent book. Truly one of my favourites. And I love that picture too. The kind of sickly, aristocratic look there. Isn't that great? Oh yes, this is the famous yellow book that is mentioned in the picture of Dorian Gray. And there are some such funny ideas in here. One of them I really like is that the narrator plans this trip to London in considerable detail, and when he reaches the railway terminus, he just decides, no, I won't go to London, and just turns back, and then decides that the planning of the trip was the pleasure rather than actually putting it into effect. And there's another instance where he has a cowl designed for one of his domestic servants so that when they walk past his window and cast a shadow, he doesn't find their silhouette offensive. So I also thought that was really funny too. There's also the business with his olfactory machine in here so that he can sample all kinds of amazing perfumes. Yeah, this is a great book. You can see me smiling as I recall it. I've tried reading it in French as well, but my only real understanding of it does come at the moment from the English version. I think this translation though is rather lumpy, unfortunately. Next we have more Dostoevsky, and this also has an amazing picture on the cover. This one and Marianne Newton are some of my favourites. Does it say who it's by? It's a self-portrait by Ivan Kramskoy. Ivan Kramskoy. Simply magnificent. I've read bits and pieces of this over the years, but unfortunately I'm getting on. I'm over 50 now, and I think the first time I read this was when I was 20, so I barely retain any knowledge of it. Then we have Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley, and this is Mary and Maria and Matilda. A lot of M's in the titles of this, isn't there? And a very strange looking expression on that gentleman's face on the cover too. Let's see who he is. It's a portrait of Sir Alexander Donne with his daughter Elizabeth by Henry Raeburn. So, absolutely no connection with Mary Shelley herself. Yeah? Haven't got round to this one yet either. Then, Chinese classic. And I'll try once again to say it properly. My wife always says I do a horrible job. I know the first tone is the first one, so it's trans or something like this. Great art on the cover too. I've read this. It's beautiful. It really is. You can extract so much pleasure from reading this, and not a little wisdom too, as one might expect. And my favourite one was actually called Broken Suitcases. Yeah, that was my favourite, but all of this is just great. Oh, there are a few illustrations here too. Let me find one. Oh yes, there's a beautiful waterfall. So, highly recommended. Then, I'm not really sure of the purpose of this book, although it is titled Inspirations, Selections from Classic Literature. This was really cheap. That's why I picked it up, pennies, and I'll just run down the kind of thing you'll find in here. Yeah, Nelson Mandela, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Robert Louis Stevenson, George Orwell, Borges, Yeats, T.H. Lawrence, Machiavelli, Lewis Carroll. Yeah, I really think this is all over the place. Maybe this would be a good gift for a child who's getting into literature, but I don't think for an adult this could be considered a worthwhile purchase. It's just too random. Next, I've just read all 3 of these, haven't I? I've mentioned them on the channel. It's Vathek, Castle of Otranto, and Frankenstein, with a beautiful cover too. Castle there. And of these, my favourite would be the Castle of Otranto. Would be my favourite. I used to hold Frankenstein in the highest esteem, but I've since kind of rode back on my position, and I really didn't enjoy it a fat lot this time. I'll just show you my notes. Made every effort to learn as much as I could even reading it again, but here's another page. Just to show you, I don't really care about writing all over these mass market paperbacks. I know some people are just intent on preserving them in a pristine state, but really, they're just there to be used if you're a student of literature. Yes, Castle of Otranto, definitely my favourite. If you haven't read it, highly recommend it. It's a Horace Walpole, 1760s, and it's just so fast moving. It's truly, truly enjoyable, and it's where it all begins. So, good deal there, 3 novels in one. Next, a real doorstop. It's George Gissing's New Grub Street. Now, I haven't really made any videos about Gissing on the channel, but he is one of my favourite, if not the favourite, Victorian writer. Well, it's him and Dickens, basically, isn't it? They don't really overlap too much in terms of what they do. And this one was just superb. It's really slow moving for the first 100 pages or so, but it just gathers more and more force as you read through until, what is it, the final 200 pages are just simply amazing. What a brilliant novel. Just the heaviness of Gissing, what a serious-minded man he was. He looked so deeply into the issues of Victorian society and also inside himself. The psychology on display is really interesting too. I've read a few of his novels. Born in Exile, probably my favourite, and also his final novel, Will Warburton, is really stunning. A wonderful romance. Then, more Victorian material. It's Tennyson with his Idylls of the King, his rewriting of Arthurian romance. I love Arthurian romance, and I also do enjoy Tennyson's poetry, so this is a good match for me. The painting on the front is not my favourite of the death of Arthur. There's a painting by Archer, which I prefer. So spake the king, low bowed the prince and felt his work was neither great nor wonderful, and passed to Enid's tent, and thither came the king's own leech to look into his hurt, and Enid tended on him there and there, her constant motion round him, and the breath of her sweet tenders hovering over him, filled all the genial courses of his blood, with deeper and with ever deeper love, as the southwest that blowing Bala Lake fills all the sacred deep, so passed the days. That was just chosen at random. I'm sorry, but the rain has really picked up, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to shout over the top of it, so I think we'll take a little break here, and I will resume when the rain has died down. Thankfully, the rain has now abated somewhat, and so we're ready to continue. And next we have this, The Diary of a Nobody by George and Whedon Grossmith, full actually of illustrations just like this. It's such a comic classic. If you enjoyed Jerome K. Jerome's 3 Men in a Boat, then you're almost guaranteed to enjoy this too. Highly recommended. The misadventures of Mr. Pooter and his family. The sun is a particular source of merriment. Next we have Graham Greene, The Ministry of Fear, a frankly awful cover. I haven't read that much Graham Greene, only The Fallen Idol. I'm just about to read The Power and the Glory for my class on spirituality. Then another Trollope novel, The Prime Minister, another doorstop. And this has a wonderful picture on the front of our parliamentarians there, hard at work as usual, talking. And finally, of the Black Penguin classics, it's Charles Beaumont, who was one of the writers for The Twilight Zone. This is full of weird tales, and the cover art is magnificent. It's by Will Sweeney, a British artist whose work I'm really into. Okay, that concludes those, and now we'll have the Modern Library. First up, a Middle East mosaic. This is what? Fragments of Life, Letters and History from the Middle East. As you can see clearly from the cover, I've not read any of this yet. Next, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Twice Told Tales. I've read Goodman Brown, which was really good, by Hawthorne, a very powerful writer, but I've yet to investigate the contents of this. Next, an old favourite, Plato. I've read a number of these dialogues over the years, but a few months ago I found this for pennies, and so that is on the side. He talks quite a lot about the impact of writing, which for literary studies is pretty useful. And there is, of course, the allegory of the cave, which reappears from time to time in my classes. Next, Mark Twain. Haven't we already had this? The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Yes, I think it's just a different edition with a less inspiring cover than the previous one. I also have the Norton Critical Edition of that. Then 2 volumes of Plutarch's Lives. This is written in a kind of awkward style, as if to mirror the original Latin. So I find this really heavy going, but I have read a few of the lives. This one, the first one of Theseus, was really good. And there is Coriolanus, of course, which Shakespeare based an excellent play upon. There is volume 2. A nice set of volumes. And next, Bullfinch's Mythology, an absolute classic, along with Fraser's The Golden Bough. And I do dip into this on occasion. A very valuable work of reference. Another Twain book, The Innocents Abroad. What's it called? The New Pilgrim's Progress. Great picture there of the pyramids on the front. Haven't read any of this either. I should get through my Twain books. He really is one of my favourite American writers. Another Trollope, The Warden. Not a very inspiring cover. Hopefully the novel is more inspiring. And then Nathaniel Hawthorne again, The Marble Fawn. Beautiful title actually, The Marble Fawn, and frankly, beautiful picture adorning the cover. All right, one more stack of these and then we're done. Next we have Stendhal, The Red and the Black. I haven't got into this one yet either. I've tried. I've read the first 30 or so pages. Excuse me. And then rather given up. I must persevere because so many great things have been said about this work. Hardy, Far from the Madding Crowd. Haven't got round to this one either yet. Then we have poetry. Now I have read some of these. Of course, The Flea, probably one of the most famous, but this is frankly wonderful. John Donne, The Complete Poetry and Selected Prose of John Donne. Great picture of him there on the cover. Just a frankly brilliant poet. Then The Essential Writings of Ralph Waldo Emerson, Transcendentalist, and I have read some of these. Actually, a German friend of mine did a translation of some of Emerson's writing, and I did do some research to help with that. Yeah, that was back in the 2000s. Great writer. Another wonderful writer. It's Poe with his only novel, The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket. I've only read the first few chapters, and while I was reading all of Poe's short stories, I toyed with reading this too, and they are magnificent. I just love Poe's writing about the sea. I'll get round to finishing this one this month actually. I'm just going to put it right back here. Carry on with it maybe tomorrow even. Short stories of Latin American women with a beautiful picture of 2 striking ladies on the cover. Let me just repeat the name of the artist. I did mention it when I did the book haul. It is, oh yes, Francesca Rota with Años 20. Okay, the 20s. And I remember seeing that you can buy this painting online, and it wasn't actually that much. Well, if you've got $10,000 US lying around, it can be yours. Some H.G. Wells, The War of the Worlds. I reviewed this. I reviewed these 3 together actually recently for the channel. The Invisible Man. This was quite good. This was actually the best of the 3. This was the second best. And we should have The Time Machine. Oh no, it's on my desk at work, sorry. Just those 2 there. Yes, one of the students wanted to read it. Tolstoy, War and Peace. I will get round to reading this. I know it's rather the proverbial mammoth book that everyone says they're going to read and never quite gets around to, like Proust's many volumes. But how many pages? 1,300? Yes, I can read this year. If it's anything like as good as Anna Karenina, it will be a delight every single page. Oh, another great book. At the Mountains of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft. I've ordered the Library of America collection of Lovecraft's tales. A great writer. I don't care about his horrible views on race. I just care about him as an artist, and I just love the cadences of his prose. So I should do a review of this at some point. An early spy novel next. The Riddle of the Sands by Erskine Childers. I should do a review of this too, actually. I don't know what regular viewers of the channel would make of the fact that I found this to be absolutely brilliant. It might not be the kind of thing you would expect me to enjoy, but it's told in the first person, and the richness of the narration. They're out at sea for almost the entire novel, but the narrator's voice just has that London clubland vibe about it, which I really enjoy. He's a true gentleman. Yeah, this was great. And the suspense element was just really thrilling. Works so well. Really, absolute classic. And the last two, The Arabian Nights. I'm rather grateful to see this. I was looking around for this, and I've read many of the tales, but I should do what I did with the Decameron this month and last month and just simply read it from start to finish, so you've got all of it in your head, all lodged there nicely, and make some good notes on it. Yeah, very enjoyable. And finally, and I have read some of this, it's one of the rare classical books which I have dipped into. It is Tacitus, with the annals and the histories, and I don't have it bookmarked, but there's a particular moment I like. They're discussing a man who has many accomplishments, but is of rather low birth, or may not even know who his father was. And one of the people speaking suggests that this person is his own ancestors. I just find that such a beautiful way of kind of looking past someone's origins and just seeing the man themselves. So that really struck me. Hopefully there's more kind of examples of statesmanship and wisdom within these pages. But that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes this installment of the Grand Bookshelf Tour. I apologise that they're just all classics rather than being grouped more tightly by genre or period, but there you go. It gives you some insight into what is adorning my shelves, and now all that remains is for me to bid you farewell in the customary fashion. So until next time, be safe, be strong, nanu nanu.